Thank you for joining us. I will now turn it over to Dean Eric Johnson to begin the event.
Well, welcome and good morning from Nashville. I'm Eric Johnson, Dean of Owen's Graduate School of Management, and it's a really big pleasure to be able to host today's Changemakers session focused on Vanderbilt alumni who are really out making a difference. And today we have Nat Robinson and Tori Samples. They are the co-founders of Leaf Global Fintech. And it's a company that offers virtual banking services to vulnerable populations in Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, allowing people to store and importantly, transport assets across the country borders through the use of a mobile device and blockchain technology. Nat earned his MBA at the Owen School and JD from the law school. He's currently CEO of Leaf and previously had been involved in another startup that provided micro asset financing to rural farmers in Kenya. He's author of the book, Creating a Cash Cow in Kenya, Adventures in Starting a Social Business and Living in Africa, one I'd highly recommend. It's a great read, enjoyed it myself. And it gives you a little background of why he is doing what he's doing today. Tori Samples earned her bachelor's in music at the Blair School, and then later an MBA at the Owen School. She's currently the Chief Technology Officer for Leaf, and previously was a data architect at HCA here in town, HCA Healthcare. She's been working in direct patient care delivery settings around the globe, including HIV and AIDS clinics in Tunisia. So I gotta say, I've had the great joy of having a ringside seat of watching Leaf hatch, as it were, kind of come to life. And what we're gonna hear today is Nat and Tori tell a little bit of their story of how Leaf germinated at Vanderbilt, the support of lots of different organizations across campus, including the Turner Family Center for Social Ventures here at the Owen School and the Wond'ry, Vanderbilt's Innovation Center. And in particular, a couple of our faculty, professors, Bart Victor and Jules White, who are also on the panel today. Bart Victor is the Cal Turner Professor of Moral Leadership Emeritus at Vanderbilt and has been a longtime faculty at the Owen School, serving on the advisory board, and really he's quite humble about that, but he was really the spark plug for the creation of the Turner Family Center for Social Ventures, which is an interdisciplinary student-led organization that's really committed to bringing students together across campus to develop socially and environmentally conscious leaders. Bart also leads Project Pyramid, which is a course dedicated to ending global poverty. And it takes teams of Vanderbilt students all over the world to do social entrepreneurship. Jules White is an associate professor of computer science and computer engineering in the School of Engineering and holds a secondary appointment in the School of Medicine as associate professor of biomedical informatics. Jules is a double door who earned his master's and PhD from Vanderbilt. And we really were just excited to bring this outstanding group together today to tell you a little bit about this neat collaboration and kind of transitional work that's happening on our campus. So to better understand that, we're going to really let them talk a little bit about what they're doing as part of this Changemaker series. And so at this time, it's really a great pleasure to turn this over to Nat and Tori to tell you a little bit about their journey.
Thanks so much, Dean Johnson.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for including us. We're honored to present and honored to talk more about Leaf in our journey and how Vanderbilt has played such a special role in its creation. So Tori and I are going to give a quick overview of the company and a bit about our journey with Vanderbilt, and hope that only takes 10 minutes or so, and would love to jump into some of the question and answering after that. So before we start, please just take a moment and think about the contents of your wallet and what you have on you, your cash, your cards, and your identity. And now imagine that you're forced to flee your country and you have to leave everything behind. This is the tragic reality facing nearly 80 million people who've had to leave everything behind and carry cash with them across borders, which is dangerous, inconvenient, and expensive. And this is exactly why we've created Leaf. It's a global virtual bank to help refugees and migrants safely store and transport their cash across borders. We're blockchain backed, and there's no need for a smartphone or internet connection to access our services. In addition to the 80 million, there's another 168 million people who are facing crisis and could be displaced at any time. But beyond refugees and migrants, we've discovered that there's a much larger need for this cross-border financial services. For example, in Africa alone, there are 500 million people who rely on cross-border trade, and it's predominantly done in cash. Additionally, globally, there are 2.4 billion non-smartphone users who have need for access to our services. We estimate that the global market is about $42 billion for what we've developed. Our team, as Dean Johnson mentioned, brings a unique background. My past has been in microfinance in Kenya, where I use a lot of technology to deliver financial services, but also a lawyer and JD and MBA from Vanderbilt. Tori is our technical lead who has experience working with HCA and as a database architect, but has also personally worked with refugees within the US for 15 years. The rest of our team, who's in East Africa and the US, brings experience in blockchain, compliance, regulation, and fintech. Now, let me give you a sense for how Leaf works. So our customer base within East Africa, from their mobile phone, can either download the app and register or be registered by one of our agents, at which point then they can go to a local kiosk and deposit cash. And we're using a system called Mobile Money that's already in and across Africa. There are 1.4 million of these agents at every street corner. So someone can give that person cash, and then it gets reflected on the Leaf wallet once they're registered. At that point, that customer can cross a border safely without carrying cash. Additionally, once they've created their Leaf account, they can store, they can send money to friends and family, they can use it to make payments. So it's a very versatile service, again, works on both smartphones and non-smartphones. But ultimately, when that refugee or migrant gets to another country, they can withdraw those funds and have more money to get started in their new country and be less dependent on that host nation.
So to give you a sense of the product itself, not commute yourself, thanks. It is one global wallet that goes with the customer wherever they go. So there's no need to set up multiple accounts depending on which country you're in, but it is accessible with two front ends. So one for smartphones and one for non-smartphones, and users can switch between them as they wish. And with this, they can store their money over time. They can send and receive with anyone on the Leaf system for free. They can cash in and cash out through those mobile money networks that Nat mentioned, and they can exchange into multiple currencies. We're also adding new features like loans and insurance in the future. We do get a lot of questions on how our business is set up. We are a for-profit entity, and we see a huge market here. It's an overlooked opportunity in that we're basically combining the revenue models of banking and money transfer, but eliminating a lot of the cost of legacy technology and brick and mortar networks. And so with that, we expect to break even at about 7,400 accounts. We also get a lot of questions about how we're different than what's on the market. This is a bit different than our context in the US, but especially in East Africa, but in many countries around the world, you either get domestic solutions like banks and mobile money that don't cross borders, or you get point-to-point money transfer companies like Western Union, in which you can send funds easily, but they're expensive and still require physical cash pickup. Digital payments, as we've seen with COVID, are ever more important, but still quite a challenge in many countries around the world. And so Leaf sits in the space between those three areas with savings, remittances, and payments. We went live last year in 3 countries in East Africa, in Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya. I'm sitting here in Rwanda today. And we've got about now 1,700 customers, and we've processed almost 8,000 transactions in that time. We're a Techstars company. We went through the Techstars Western Union Accelerator, and we have a partnership with a commercial bank in Africa that allows us to make headway in some of the regulatory spaces there. We've also had the opportunity to win awards from the Vatican, South by Southwest, the United Nations, and the National Science Foundation with the help of the Wond'ry. And I'm very happy to answer questions about any of those experiences. They're all quite fun and interesting on their own. Going forward, we're very excited to expand our footprint, both geographically and in our product offering. We're expanding across East Africa this year, and we're also developing a lending product so that our Leaf customers can not only have the savings side and use Leaf for their day-to-day payments and transactions, but can start to build up a credit history in order to take out microloans. We're also looking at markets like Colombia and Venezuela. We've done some research there and think that there's also a large opportunity for Leaf services. But shifting from the future to a little bit of the past, we wanted to look backwards and just showcase how Vanderbilt was a part of this journey. You can see here all of the resources that we utilized while we were in school and afterwards as well. We like to joke that we did max out every opportunity that Vanderbilt afforded us, and we say that, you know, with as much gratitude as possible. But I think you hear many people say that when you're founding a startup, you should look to incubators and accelerators to prove out the concept and provide resources in those early days. And I think what we've seen is that a university can be the best incubator of all. There is no accelerator or early stage investor that could provide expertise across business, social impact, regulation, technology. And so we'll highlight some of this in just a moment, but briefly, we started at Owen with the Holt Prize, and we're able to get grant funding from Owen to pursue this opportunity. The TFC provided mentorship and student resources. The law school gave academic support, especially on the blockchain regulatory side. And the Wond'ry and ANS both contributed resources for us more on the technology side. ANS with the computer science department and Jules, and then the Wond'ry in providing us grant support. We actually won an SBIR grant through the National Science Foundation with the support of the Wond'ry, and just applied for phase 2 of that grant, which is $4 million. So to flesh out what some of this looks like and to provide a little bit of the story behind just the words on the screen, we'll walk through the journey briefly.
Great. So this all, I think you can trace our story back to an opportunity called the Holt Prize that was supported by both Owen and the Turner Center for Social Ventures. And it's a business plan competition that every year they have a different impact or social theme. And in 2016, the challenge was the global refugee crisis and challenging student groups to come up with business ideas to support and help refugees globally. And so I was matched up with Tori and 2 other friends from the business school and law school to come up with ideas. And we ended up pitching a very different idea and made it to Dubai, the regional finals. And that's a picture of us presenting in Dubai, one of our other ideas, but did well enough that it really, I think, helped us hone how do you come up with a business idea, how do you pitch it, and then defend it. And we kept working on some of the other ideas that we had brainstormed in that group, and one of which was this concept for financial services for refugees and using blockchain technology. So we went on to then pitch at the Launch Tennessee pinch competition and won about $15,000 for that, which was enough to do some market research over the summer. The Turner Center was nice enough to help us get some fellows and graduate students to send to 6 different countries all around the world to speak with refugees, speak with banks, and get a sense for what are the opportunities for this business idea. We went on to win the SOAR grants pitch competition and continued to develop the business idea. And for a spring break trip, that was in 2018, we sent, it was about 11 students from 4 different schools within Vanderbilt to do some initial testing on the border of Congo and Rwanda. So it was a spring break in Rwanda, working with potential customers, testing the technology. We had a great time. And from that, I think demonstrated that this actually could be a business idea, and then went on to pitch and present at South by Southwest, won an award there, recognized, and continued to build up that momentum through graduation, where we feel like we had raised enough money and tested the market and technology enough that Tori and I could justify going full-time and continuing to launch this business.
So we spent the rest of 2018 really diving into the problem and the market, not being quick to rush in with a solution or technology. But in 2019, we felt like we really had a handle on that and we knew it was needed. And so we found a fintech partner in Uganda and ran a closed beta over the course of 2019 with about 100 customers in 5 countries. We launched that during the Techstars Accelerator program that I mentioned earlier. That was in conjunction with Western Union, which was a wonderful way for us to explore corporate partnerships and get introduced to a lot of early stage investors. Things were all coming together at the beginning of 2020. We had a $1.3 million seed round put together, and then COVID happened and all of our lives changed very, very quickly. Our seed round fell apart and borders were closed all across the world. And so we quickly pivoted and saw that even during COVID, digital payments are more important than ever. And people are relying on money from friends and family more than they ever have. And especially when people can't cross borders, it is even more important that money be able to. And so we went underground for about 4 months over the summer and completely rebuilt the product from the ground up with feedback from the beta. And we were able to eliminate all dependency upon other tech partners in order to relaunch in September and get to the numbers that I shared earlier. So it's been a fun journey to this point. We've had to adapt, as every entrepreneur does, especially in recent times. But that brings us to 2021 and our roadmap for growth and expansion, not just with the countries that we're in, but also with our team and our product offering. We'll close the formal part of the presentation here, but I'd like to say in closing that we're so thankful to the Vanderbilt community. Obviously, from that journey, you'll see there's no way that we could have gotten to where we are without the early support of Vanderbilt and in all of the resources from students, staff, and faculty across the university. I'd say that we're still very open always to collaboration. And so if there's any way that you'd like to get involved with Leaf, our contact information is here. Feel free to reach out. And if we can be helpful to you, whether that's as a student or an entrepreneur or someone who might even use Leaf services, we'd love to be in touch. Thanks. I believe we'll shift into the panel portion of this and then get to take some Q&A.
Now we can keep talking about Leaf.
Very happy to do that all day long. But I'm sure Jules or Bart would love to share as well.
Okay, I'll go next, all right? And I'm Bart Victor, and I've had the privilege to be working with Tori and Nat in an attempt to help them realize their extraordinary ambition, but an ambition that really is driven by the most inspiring of compassion. And I've been working with Nat ever since he walked into my office. What was it, in 2007?
Yep.
After listening to a presentation by Mohammed Yunus, the founder of the Green Bank, and he taught me this first lesson, right? Which was that compassion with insight recognizes that it needs competence. And that's why they walked into my office. They said, look, we want to do this sort of thing, but we want to learn how to do it well. Because they also recognize something that they taught me, which is that complex problems require complex solutions. And so we, led by our students over the last 2 decades, have been trying to bring the university's resources to bear to support students who are driven by this compassion seeking competence. And that's been an amazing experience and really has taught me finally about the possibilities that the university can bring to these problems in the world. And I think uniquely the university can do it. And Tori and Nat's journey that's been described here, I think is powerful evidence of what university can do. And if we follow our students, and if we bring ourselves across our own boundaries to really support their compassionate ambitions. So I was really deeply grateful to both of these folks for giving me a chance to do my work in the way that I ought to do it. So thanks.
Thanks, Bart.
And, you know, one of the things that I think Vanderbilt does really well is interdisciplinary work. So I'm a faculty member in computer science. And one of the things that's really fun about being at Vanderbilt is there's lots of ways that Vanderbilt goes out of its way to make sure that people connect. So it has lots of you know, resources for faculty members to connect and do things like, you know, connect across schools and work on research together. But it also has set up a lot of centers. So things like the Wond'ry, which allow you to, as a faculty member or a student, to connect to people from other disciplines. So, you know, myself and other people in computer science are doing work on blockchain and research in these spaces, research in healthcare. And, you know, had Vanderbilt not had the Wond'ry, we might never have run into, you know, Nat and Tori. But through the Wond'ry, I was connected to Nat and Tori, and they were, you know, looking into going through some of the National Science Foundation programs. We do a lot of work in computer science with the National Science Foundation. We do a lot of work with SBIR funding. And so there was a real natural fit for us to get together and work on an I-Corps grant and then potentially an SBIR later on. So we were connected through the Wond'ry and had this opportunity. And I think that's one of the real strengths that Vanderbilt has is, you know, things that we were doing in computer science that might be siloed at other places because of these sort of programs that are set up to connect people. You get really interesting opportunities, and then that helps inform, you know, going through the experience with Leaf really taught me a lot about my research in terms of what's important, and also seeing how the things that we're doing can have impact and also new things that are important to consider in all of this. So, you know, there's so many ways that once you come into Vanderbilt, either as a faculty member or a student, that you kind of become part of this relationship with Vanderbilt and part of a community. And you know, I think that's one of the really fun things that's about being here is because there are so many opportunities to connect with people. They're doing things that are related to what you're doing, but bring a whole new dimension to it. I mean, this is an area, obviously, as a researcher in computer science, you know, Nat and Tori are thinking through problems that were completely off of my radar before I, you know, got exposure to what Leaf is doing and seeing the really exciting things. So I think that's one of the really fantastic things that, you know, Vanderbilt as a whole and, you know, the leadership has done is making sure that these relationships cross schools, you know, cross programs and really get people working together.
Can I just add one, just to build on what Jules said and make what I think is a really important appreciation for what Vanderbilt's done, which is that all of these things that happened, and you see all of these resources brought to bear, behind that, what you might not recognize is that at Vanderbilt there is leadership, and Jules described that. Right? There's leadership that makes that happen, and it's not easy. And so Eric, Dean Johnson, excuse me, but Eric has been just he's been a barrier breaker. He's been a connector. He's been an active and not just enthusiastic, but extraordinarily capable support to letting the university be a university and not just a collection of schools. And it's been an absolutely pivotal part to this happening, because there's so many ways that we can get in the way of this kind of innovation, in the way of this kind of ambition, and we need leadership to make those barriers fall. So thanks to all of those folks across the university.
To just echo that, as an entrepreneur and as a student, I will say that my goal of going back to Vanderbilt Law School was not to start another social enterprise, but just the interest, the excitement, the connections, and then the support we got from Vanderbilt. It was hard not to. And now I'm in this position. We've received so much support from Vanderbilt that if we don't make it, it'll be really embarrassing. We got so much of a head start compared to some other companies around the world. And I'm glad that we're still around and survived the first year within COVID, but it was phenomenal. And I think, yep, Dean Johnson, and I also would suggest there too, the law school with Dean Guthrie got a lot of support. Just me personally, from the career perspective, I was sort of expecting him and Dean Johnson to say, oh, go get a job, earn the money, and then try to start this up. And no, they were very, very supportive of my career decisions of pushing this forward. And I think we were even invited to pitch and present both to the law board, the school, the board of the law school, as well as the business school, and then the broader Vanderbilt board. That was an experience too, to have all 11 students from various different grad programs and undergrad programs presenting to the leadership of the Vanderbilt board was quite the opportunity. So it was a phenomenal experience, and really enjoyed it. And I hope we can continue to make Leaf a success with all the support we've received.
I'll echo that and say that this was not my plan coming out of business school either, but Vanderbilt did its number on me as well. So thought I would be out of technology, stick to the typical MBA track, and again was just floored by the amount of progress that we were able to make, all while in school. I was working part-time and in school full-time, and we still, because of the university resources, were able to flesh out this business to the point where it wasn't even really a choice. We had to do it.
So Leaf is particularly complex, right? When you really step back and look at it, because on one hand, you can see a business school, a typical kind of business school, fintech kind of idea, right? But there's nothing typical about Leaf. And, so you have the kind of business school finance piece operating and trying to build a business model around those financial flows that make this self-sustaining. But then on the other hand, you've got all the legal issues, which are not sorted out in developed countries, let alone in less developed countries. And then the technology piece, which again, not fully sorted out in developed countries. And then we're thinking about projecting that into less developed countries, with everything from the mobile app to the blockchain technology underneath it that is making it secure, and then making that happen across multiple standards in different countries and so forth. When you started down this road, I mean, some of that complexity was there from the very beginning, but where do you start in that? And, you're talking about picking the brains of different pieces of Vanderbilt and getting collaboration going, but what does that look like? Because it feels pretty daunting when you look at all those different bases, whether you run and spend some time with Professor White or Professor Victor or head off to the law school. What does that look like?
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that's now you see why we needed students from 4 different schools to be able to think about each different one of those pieces and challenges. And I think just getting started with something, building an initial viable product, get it out there, talk to customers, and I think that's what was great with the I-Corps program. It's very focused around customer discovery, because there's a lot of great ideas, a lot of good technology, but until you start talking to customers, it's really hard to know where to get started. And I think we're also fortunate with Tori and her network in Nashville of having some refugee families from Congo and from Rwanda living in Nashville that we could talk to about that and get some contacts within East Africa, and then connecting that with some of my background and experience. And maybe that was some of the things I learned from the beginning and starting another company, and just not being afraid of the daunting challenges, especially the regulation, the legal. It's terrifying. The anti-money laundering, the less documented customer base, moving money across borders. Those are really tricky challenges. But starting somewhere and getting momentum, even if it's just talking to customers, I think that's where we started. And I feel like that's really helpful in building momentum and realizing that there's something here. And that's what we did all around the world, spoke with potential customers and partners and continued to get positive feedback that, yeah, there's something here. It's hard, but it's worth doing.
Yeah, I would say you get good at pattern matching across the board, but if you talk to enough people, talk to enough refugees, talk to enough people who have just traveled internationally, you'll start hearing the same stories woven through or the same patterns woven through those stories. And I think also, again, one of the advantages of starting this at a university, I am a big advocate for borrowed expertise. I am very good at some things and not very good at a lot of things. And so, you don't want me building every part of our tech stack. You don't want the two of us being responsible for every aspect of this. And so I think, especially in the early days, it was very, very important to be able to bring in outside minds just to look at something, something like foreign exchange or the potential risks of including a cutting edge technology like blockchain. All sorts of things that became this patchwork of expertise from people in our networks.
Of course, I'm watching some of the questions that rolled in and some of the questions that are rolling in, and there are a lot of technical questions, Tori. People are wondering why blockchain and what does this tech stack look like, and how did engineering and computer science and Professor White help with that? How did you find solutions to what are pretty tough technical problems?
Yeah, I will try to stick to the short version of this because, as Bart's already said, sometimes complex problems deserve a complex solution, and sometimes the answers are also complex. But I think overall, my background, I'm a data architect, database designer. Blockchain is a database at the end of the day. I am not one who uses technology just for the buzzword. Been through a number of those hype cycles in my career at HCA. And so Nat is very much the visionary dreamer of the two of us. And so he was the first one to say, we should use blockchain. And my typical counterpart to that was, well, why? No, I don't think we should. And so that sparked the conversation around how this could possibly benefit a solution like Leaf far before Leaf was ever developed. I think where we draw the line is that we know we have a very conservative use of blockchain. We try to use it for the things that it does well and not for anything else. So we originally built on Ethereum, which is I'd say the most popular blockchain out there. And we found that it was a really bad technical fit for what we were doing. It's extremely slow, it's expensive. It wasn't going to work for what we needed and for what our customers needed. You can't have someone in a developing country who is sitting there without a smartphone waiting 10 minutes for their transaction to go through as they're trying to literally cross the border and flee for their life. That doesn't work. And so we quickly pivoted to the Stellar blockchain, which we found out about through a contact in Mexico that one of our TFC fellows had met. And it turns out that was a great technical fit. So it's very fast, very cheap. It removes the mining component of Bitcoin and Ethereum that typically make those slower and more expensive. And it was developed for cross-border payments in emerging markets. So once we decided on that, it was pretty quick in coming together. I'll also say it's not a consumer-facing technology for us. Refugees never need to know that there is a blockchain behind the scenes powering this. They interact in currencies that they already know and trust. So they're saying Ugandan shillings, Rwandan francs, et cetera. And behind the scenes, we're using a blockchain to process those cross-border transactions very quickly. And if you think about what that looks like for a bank transfer, you're paying $50 and waiting a couple days for that to go through. We can do that in 3 to 5 seconds, and it costs a fraction of a penny. That also ensures that we can eliminate the need for trust between a customer and Leaf. There's been a history of fraud in the refugee space. And so we can say, hey, we have an open set of books here. It's all de-identified, it's anonymized, so that you can't trace it back to the customers. But putting it on a public ledger outsources our storage for transactions, and then also allows us to show every cent that is passing in and out of the system. And so it's some of the other wallets that are out there, I think, are more vulnerable to a data breach or a hack. Even just like typical disaster recovery can be a challenge for startups because we typically don't have the funds to do that. Blockchain solves a lot of those problems behind the scenes. And then also it ensures that we keep ourselves to a high level of integrity. So we can't use customer funds to pay off our operational costs because that would be very visible to anyone who looked. Jules, do you want to add anything on just what we've seen in this space and how blockchain can be used well or not so well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think that unfortunately, there was a lot of excitement about blockchain and then a lot of desire to use blockchain for everything because it was exciting. And so I think that the downside of that is that, companies that are using it in a way that it was really designed for from the beginning. I mean, it was used as to provide exactly what Tori's talking about, which is a distributed ledger that is very open, and you can prove that money is not being misused or that whatever it is that you're tracking is flowing in the way that you expect it, that there's an open ledger that everybody agrees upon. And so this was the original use, and people decided, well, we want to use this for everything under the sun, and it became very exciting. But there's a lot of places where that's just not the most efficient way of tracking assets or other things. So whenever you don't trust the other people in the chain, whenever there's, you basically create cost when you're not going to trust everybody. So, but when it comes to something like what Leaf is doing, trust is absolutely essential, and it's important that you pay the cost, pay the price of having something like a blockchain behind it to guarantee that everything is transparent and done correctly. And also because it is distributed, you're talking about going across borders and taking money in and out in different places. You could do that with traditional banking, but this is exactly the type of thing that blockchain was really designed for. There's lots of other exciting use cases of we'll use it for our solar power on our houses and our neighborhood and trade energy. But that's probably a little farther down the road. That and there's lots of things to be solved. But this is exactly what blockchain was meant for from the beginning, is providing a really provably correct, honest ledger of transactions and movement, of money in particular. So I think it's exciting to see that. Unfortunately, now there's sort of a negative connotation sometimes to blockchain. But this isn't the case where you maybe should feel a little bit of the pessimism towards it.
Well, and to be able to do that in developing countries too, I'll say we love flipping the paradigm on its head and offering this cutting edge technology to people who don't have a smartphone, don't have an internet connection, have no idea what is happening behind the scenes and the services that they're getting because of this new technology.
So one of the things that we preach in entrepreneurship day in and day out at the Owen School is customer discovery, really kind of understanding, what the customer really wants and finding that customer, proving that that customer is there and that your solution has something to do with improving their life. And Nat and Tori, I mean, you both had great on the ground experience prior to even this launch. And then, of course, have spent a lot of time close to the ground. But you also leveraged your time at Vanderbilt student teams to go out and help do a little bit of that work for you, particularly through some of the Project Pyramid and other kind of student projects. And I was curious how successful that was. And also, I'd love to have Professor Victor talk a little bit about how he's seen those kind of customer discovery projects happen at Vanderbilt before. Not everybody's a Nat and a Tori. Not everybody's got an idea that they want to run with, but there are a lot of students who are interested in getting their feet a little wet on the ground in a kind of an unusual environment. So I don't know who wants to start with that. Maybe Tori, you could start a little bit with how you used it, and then we can have Professor Victor talk a bit about what that meant.
Sure. Well, I'll say I hope it was valuable to all of the students that we interacted with as well. I think that they were all able to use their experiences with Leaf in job interviews and get good jobs afterwards. So if that's a metric, that's exciting. But I think that it was valuable for us in, again, being able to crowdsource a lot of the boots on the ground work and just talk to a lot of people very quickly. So we not only had the groups that Nat mentioned with the TFC fellows over the summer, and then the Project Pyramid course over the spring, going out to Rwanda, but we also had informal independent studies with undergrads who just found us somehow through the Vanderbilt network and said, hey, I want to work with Leaf. What can I do? And I think we see that there is value in every person like that. And customer discovery is usually one of the things that somebody can jump in very quickly with and find a way to be good at it and provide really valuable information when that's something that we don't necessarily have time to do. Well, not that we don't have time to do it, we do it as well. But you know, when we're focusing on a specific problem and trying to build out a specific piece of the business model or something else. Nat, did you want to add anything on that?
It's essential. It was really critical at that time. It just helps inform the business that much better. So not only can you design and develop a service that's useful, but also, I hope Bart touches on this, one that's responsible, that's really responding to the needs of a customer base that's, in our case, typically been exploited by a lot of companies and governments. And so doing that really well. I'll also say that it's a journey. It's continuous. You can't just decide to do customer discovery and then, oh, we've got it. We know what they want and let's do it. We did that. We developed a wonderful cross-border service and then the borders closed. So now what? Then we had to go back to that customer base and retool and retweak and pivot a bit. So it's a continual activity. But I'm really fortunate to have those resources. And Bart was a big supporter of us from day one and allowing us to promote these crazy ideas to the students and then supporting it through the Turner Center. So thanks for that. It was a great trip. I think everyone made it to Rwanda and Congo. Everyone made it back.
Nobody got sick. Nobody got detained.
Yep. Kidnapped.
High standards. But highly recommend Spring Break Rwanda anytime.
Professor Victor, I mean, you've seen this before in other projects and other things. What is it that makes this successful, or how do you make this magic work? Taking groups of students who maybe have never even been to the country they're going to, likely they haven't, but then go do something useful and not create harm along the way, which I've heard you talk about on a number of occasions.
Yeah, I thanks for that, Eric. It's absolutely true that two things that I would just sort of draw from what you described, what everybody's described. One is that a lot of our students come to their preparation for profession wanting to do something positive in the world with that. They come with a lot of care. That doesn't mean that they are ready to do that. It doesn't mean also that every effort to do that is something that creates a responsible good. There is unfortunately a long history of people with good intention creating cost and burden and even harm to those that they would otherwise intend to help. And so we have over the years tried to work out how can we responsibly respond to students' desires to learn more about how to be have positive impact on the world through their profession in the context of the university with all the limits of time and commitment and the like. And so what we've done with Project Pyramid and with the Turner Family Center is made a decision to, one, perhaps surprisingly maybe or not, we don't do direct service. Okay, so we don't send people out to teach English or to build a house or something. We take people who are professionals and want to learn how to be professionals in ways that have positive impact on the world in partnership with people who are in the field and working with them, and then through them gaining that experience. So Leaf is a wonderful example. Leaf had this challenge of developing insights into customers, but those customers are extraordinarily vulnerable and have been through experiences that are have left them both suspicious, rightfully suspicious, and deserving of our responsible care. And so by working through Leaf, our students were able to gain contact with and experience in understanding the refugee community, the refugee problem, but do so in a way that was at least not harmful. And I think importantly, net positive, as you can see through Leaf, and then they got that experience which they can take further. And so that idea of crafting the experience carefully, working through and with partners around the world is the basic model of Project Pyramid and the Turner Family Center, and also challenging students to come to this experience as professionals in preparation. That is, not as bad carpenters or not as in other roles, but as professionals from a first-class university, and trying to develop those skills in that way. So Leaf is the way we were able to do that. And then a bunch of other partners that we've had over the years as well.
So Nat, one of the questions that people are wondering about is that you're in these 3 countries that you've been entering. How do you go to market in those countries? How do you market the product? How do you brand yourself? And is it the same for those 3 countries, or is it 3 completely different go-to-market strategies for those countries?
Yep, we get that one a lot too. And so just to add another challenge, as if the technology reaching the markets, developing the service wasn't hard enough. Now we're faced with this daunting go-to-market challenge that has also changed dramatically around the world. We went in a market that's predominantly in-person. There's a lot of trust from that in-person relationship. That was the experience I had in Kenya of providing financial services. We had to have loan officers and people on the ground talking to farmers, earning that trust, because there's a lot of scams, there's a lot of fraud, unfortunately, within East Africa. So there's already some distrust of financial services. And now you layer on COVID, where you can't do that anymore. You can't be as effective in person. And so you're forced to more of these digital acquisition strategies, which is also still fairly new to East Africa and our customer base, who over half don't have smartphones and don't have access to internet and to Facebook and Instagram. And so what we've done is we've been piloting a bit of a hybrid where there's a bit of an in-touch connection, but then supported by a lot of the digital channels. And what we've found also with the refugee communities is that they're very tight, very connected communities. And when you can convince some of those thought leaders or leaders within those communities of our services and that they are beneficial, that word of mouth networking is very powerful and comes with a lot of trust. And so that's how we initially got our first 1,500 or so customers, is just through both the resettled communities, but also by hiring directly and working with 2 young refugees in one of the refugee camps in Rwanda who had smartphones and were eager and ready to work. They've been out mobilizing their friends and family and talking about our services and registering people. And then that comes with a layer of trust. It's somebody from within the community who's been using the service, who can vouch for it. That's been our great way to get that started. And that's what we've been replicating in some of our other markets, is using this sort of an agent type model where we're getting that first person with a smartphone, training them, showing them how to use Leaf, and then getting them to get their friends and family connected. Once we get that initial toehold, then the referral system starts to kick in. I think that's what we're starting to see too, is similar to Venmo and PayPal, sending within network, peer-to-peer is a free transaction. So the more people you have within your network on Leaf, there's an incentive there. So that's working at the moment. We're still exploring that, and again, a new world with COVID, but it's starting to show some results. But everything's a lot harder now, all virtual. But we're doing it, and our team has always been distributed too. So I think we've been very fortunate to have that structure before COVID hit.
So I have a beautiful Leaf T-shirt, but what I'm hearing you say is that this is not a marketing plan built on swag and hardcore advertising or even digital advertising. It really is much more relational sale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying not to be swag based, but turns out everybody in the world loves a good T-shirt. So we've also had some more T-shirts made.
We got some good masks too that have a QR code that you can scan and download Leaf. Those are a big hit in some of our markets.
So it looks like you're taking a picture of somebody when you're really getting their QR code off their mask.
Yep, it says Leaf. We'll send you some.
And as you kind of work through this minimal viable product, as it were, and validated it, was that happening all three countries at once, or was it kind of sequential? Or
Well, and that's the nature of a cross-border service. Like you have to have at least two countries to work. And so starting in Uganda, starting Rwanda, Uganda was our first piece, and then adding Kenya and soon Tanzania is not too difficult. All those countries are part of that East African community and share a lot of the regulation. And so yeah, that was the start. And then slowly adding in Congo, and then through another partnership that Tori mentioned with a major bank in the region, that's going to add another 33 countries or so to broaden that footprint. But that's where we're balancing too, is that need to add corridors and countries, but then also the complexity of new countries to then market into and to build credibility within those different markets. But yep, started with Rwanda, easy to get place to get set up, and that's Tori's in Kigali right now. I don't know if we mentioned that.
Yeah. Yep. But I'd add on that the goal is that we don't have to be physically established in a place in order to go live there. So that's the beauty of working through a partnership model where we're not the ones that are actually collecting the physical funds, is that we can very quickly move in and out of countries, which also works well if we're trying to get into potential conflict zones.
so you touched on this a little bit earlier, but we have a lot of prospective students and current students on the call today, along with alumni. And of course, the current students and prospective students are saying to themselves, well, what if this could be me? And they're asking those questions like, well, how did you know along the way that this thing had some legs, that you were willing? Did you know coming into Vanderbilt, I'm just going to go do something crazy, and that's just that's what I'm going to do? Or was there kind of a process, and what did that look like for you, Nat, and for you, Tori, as you kind of worked through your time here to know that this was something you really wanted to go do?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think both Tori and I, this was not the plan. And as Bart knows, most of my life has never worked out according to the plan. As soon as I get to a great part in life and I need to change, go back to law school, start a new company. That was not the plan for me, certainly in grad school. But there's so many exciting opportunities, especially the pitch competitions, to explore that and to try that. And I think that, at least for me, I remember at one point with that Holt Prize, we had made tremendous progress. We were winning, we're getting success. People liked the idea. I remember in the finals thinking, this isn't quite what I wanted to do, but it's a little scary. It's a little risky. If we don't make it to the next round, I'm out. Like, forget it. I'll go back, get my corporate law job. I'll go work for fun. It'll be great. And then we made it to the next round. I was like, well, great. Now I got to keep going with this and keep moving. And so for me, that's where it was real validating, was with that Holt experience and Holt competition, that there's something unique here with this market, with this opportunity, using my background, financial services, and trying to address a problem with a for-profit commercial company. That really was clear for me. I feel like Tori, maybe a little bit later in that life cycle.
Well, so at the same time that Nat was having this confirmatory process with the Holt Prize and advancing to the next stage, fast forward until we are standing in the room and they are deciding between us and another team to move on to get $1 million from the Clinton Foundation to pursue this business concept that we had proposed. And Nat's sitting there thinking to himself, I think this is enough that I can justify continue doing this. This is great. And I'm having a literal panic attack because I did not want to do it. And I was just sitting there thinking, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I have a plan. I was very set on going into hospital operations. I had my career mapped out and it was a pretty good life and I was happy with it. And I think what that taught me was I was not ready to go forward with the idea that we proposed for the Holt Prize. But 6 months later, when we had come back to the Leaf concept and when it brought together my professional background in technology with my personal experience and deep, deep passion for the people in my life who are refugees, that was enough. And when I went back to all of my mentors at Vanderbilt and HCA and others in my personal life and said, well, I'm graduating from business school and I've kind of got these three options. There's kind of the traditional like MBA consultancy track, and then there's the hospital operations, and then there's this like startup on the side that I've kind of been toying around with, and it's refugees and technology in Africa. And every single one of them just looked at me and said, Tori, why is this even a decision? You know that this is the right thing to do. It brings together so many different things from across your life. And if there's a time to explore it, go ahead. You've never failed monumentally professionally, learn from it. That's the worst that can happen. And so it's been, again, an incredible journey. I didn't come into business school thinking of myself as an entrepreneur, because I tend to be the more detail-oriented person. But I found that anyone can be an entrepreneur. There is space in that for every type of personality, every type of skill set. And we need more people from all over to dive into things that are absolutely scary and wonderful and heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, it's those big, hard, complex problems. There's not enough smart people working on them. That was also what was hard to see, is just so many talented people going into just doing incremental change with these big companies, either consulting or finance or law, when there's giant problems that the world's facing, and more every day. And I feel like Vanderbilt gave a great platform for us to get exposed to that and really see that this could be a life, and you could create a company and potentially work on a solution. So I hope, talk in 5-10 years that we'll look back and say this was a good decision, it was a good move, a good use of our time. But
well,
really
we already know that it has been for many refugees out there, and for many of our customers who are not refugees. I'm so thankful that this is not an idea. We have done this. We are still early, but we know with confidence that we are impacting people's lives today, and that is the best validation that we could possibly get out of it. And it's enough to keep us going forward until the next day to solve the next problem.
That's wonderful. I'm sure Professor White and Professor Victor would agree with me that one of the great joys of the roles that we have is that we get to kind of have ringside seats to really, really, really fun and amazing journeys. And I can still remember Tori welcoming you at Admitted Students Weekend, and like all admitted students, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and of course for faculty, we're thinking, I wonder what Tori will do when she comes. What will she do? What will Nat do? And then to be able to get to watch that whole process and see alum go off and do just really amazing things and have huge impact. And that's just so exciting. So thank you, Nat, Tori, Bart, and Jules, for a great discussion today, and for everyone who's tuned in. This is the Vanderbilt Changemakers, and it's a series that we're really excited about. So to learn more about transinstitutional projects that are happening at Vanderbilt, I encourage you to visit the web pages of the Wond'ry and the Turner Family Center for Social Ventures. We're going to pop those links up in the chat, I think, as I'm chatting. And of course, you can always Google them later if you want to go find those. But again, thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more of these great events with you soon.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Take care.